Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Legends lore video. So, mind tricks, even as used by Jedi, are definitely a dark side power, and I feel like people don't talk about that enough. You're invading somebody's mind and imposing your will upon another. Now, there are definitely degrees to mind trickery. On the low end, many Jedi would often employ auras or, slight persuasion to not directly bend to someone's will, but to just influence how they feel. Sometimes it helps clear through emotion so that the person they're speaking to can feel logic, but other times it gets a bit more coercive, such that a Force user is imposing feelings of happiness or suggestibility when speaking to somebody else. Then you have the classic mind trick that Obi-Wan does in Episode 4, or Qui-Gon attempts to do in The Phantom Menace, straight up forcing somebody else to do your will. As he's becoming a master, Luke Skywalker really grapples with this issue, and forcing yourself into the mind of somebody else, not only to poke around and see what's there, but to force somebody to do something against their will is definitely not a light side Force technique, and even when done with the best intentions, can be a path to the dark side. And Force suggestions aren't always as simple as seen in the movies. I mean, if you're powerful enough, you could command somebody to jump off a building or murder a loved one. I want to move on, but just to end this point, we can do another video on it in the future. There's a lot of nuance here. Using a mind trick to avoid bloodshed probably isn't that bad of an idea, but a person's mind is also their most intimate and personal aspect. We see in the Thrawn duology that Luke really reevaluates his behavior after he sees how Han reacts to the possibility of Luke mind probing him or controlling him without Han realizing. And it's this fear of the dark side which stops Luke from using his power almost totally, at least for a little while. Anyway, I've set this background up because Force insanity takes this sort of questionable morality of simple mind tricks and just completely destroys it. Force insanity is one of, if not the most brutal dark side techniques available. You can't use Force insanity and be a light side user. There's no instance where you can justify using this technique. It is meant to inflict a fate worse than death on an opponent and leaves them broken and utterly destroyed. So Force insanity is really just an extremely advanced form of mind manipulation, and sort of like a mind trick up to 11. I choose to use the terminology of Force insanity because that's what was used in Knights of the Old Republic, so I can't help but thinking of it that way. I mean, it's just like telekinesis. I don't think it's really important to differentiate between a Force throw or a Force pull or even a Force choke. They're really all just different applications of the same basic skills. Insanity can thus come in many different forms. So first of all, I want to look at the most prominent, I would say, example of Force insanity, which is Darth Zannah's use of the technique. So Zannah was the apprentice of Darth Bane, and she was really skilled in Sith sorcery. This was a very rare ability and allowed her to perform many esoteric rites while employing strange powers. So in the second book of the Bane trilogy, Rule of Two, Zannah uses her powers to break the mind of someone who is helping to keep her prisoner. It all starts like this. In an instant, Zannah reads her opponent's mind. She does this by using a spell, but I imagine a powerful enough Darksider could just do this through pure strength of will. And she finds what the book calls the victim's most primal fears. These are like the natural, basic, and unconscious fears that a person has, the dark things at the back of your mind. What the book calls abominations and creatures of nightmare never meant to see the light of day. Using her powers of Sith sorcery, Zannah then took these fears and materialized them before her victim, and the victim's mind just breaks. These are leviathans, incomprehensible beings. Here are a couple of quotes. The illusions grew more and more real and more terrifying the longer the spell continued. The Chiss shrieked and threw her weapon to the ground. She flung her head wildly from side to side, covering it with her arms and screaming no. Zannah could have ended it there, allowing the victim to fall into unconsciousness. She would wake hours later with only the most basic recollection of what had happened, her mind instinctively recoiling from the memories of what it had witnessed. first. Or Zannah could push the illusion even farther, driving her victim to the edge of insanity and beyond. And of course, Zannah, a Darksider, chooses to do that, and their victim basically reverts to her baser animalistic instincts as she's howling in fear and ripping her own eyes out. But by that point, it doesn't matter. Her mind is being torn apart by the fear itself, and even without eyes, again, this is just a projection of the dark side, Zannah probably could have still been successful. Eventually, she passed out, and I quote, "Her conscious mind completely and irrevocably obliterated, her catatonic body was now nothing more than an empty shell." The body shivered once, and Zannah knew that somewhere in the deepest core of Syndra's subconscious, a small part of her still existed, silently screaming, trapped forever with the horrors inside her own mind. Zannah was never quite certain what her victim saw, but based on their reactions, she figured it was probably better not to know. So basically, Zannah's technique takes forth all of the most disturbing and incomprehensible and bestial horrors which are lurking at the edges of a person's subconscious and brings them forth. However, there were other methods of force insanity. This isn't quite the same thing, but the Nal Nal was a collective organism rumored to exist in the unknown regions, which basically took the form of a goo. The goo would enter a person, it would destroy their insides, and it would reanimate them. However, the Nal Nal also liked to play with victims, it liked to destroy their minds, and it would do so through a variety of techniques, killing and reanimating the bodies of loved ones related to their victim, the utterance of strange and bizarre phrases, and a mindless buzzing. Another related phenomenon would be Abeloth's use of force psychosis, and this is admittedly a little bit stranger. So Abeloth's force psychosis manifested in several forms, as the students sheltered in the mall during the Yuzhan Vong War learned simply being near Abeloth was enough to develop this force psychosis, and their minds would eventually break, causing them to think that people around them had been replaced by imposters and giving them a general will to serve Abeloth. Abeloth was a sort of Lovecraftian demigod, so there's no surprise when I tell you that she could also break people's minds when they made direct contact, and she would often do so before forcefully inhabiting their body. So yeah, the Star Wars universe isn't a great place to have a healthy mind, especially if there are powerful Darksiders running around, but even in the company of Jedi, although you may not be driven to insanity, your mental faculties and your personal thoughts and even your free will is never totally safe. Here's my question to you. When I read the phrase, abomination and creatures of nightmare never meant to see the light of day, what kind of things do you think Zannah was bringing up to the surface? Specifically, are these so bestial and primal that they're even beyond understanding, or do you think you can put a face and a name to some of these things? Let me know all of that down in the comment section. But guys, that's all I have for today. I will be streaming some Star Fox 64 over on my second channel tonight. Really looking forward to play through that game. Link down in the description. But until next time, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.